I want to start with something today that I've heard actors say in almost every version of this conversation. It sounds something like this. She got really lucky. Or he knew the right people. Or the quieter version, this is the one that people say to themselves, at 2 a.m. when they're up at night and can't go to sleep. I am doing everything right. So why does it keep happening for everyone else? You're scrolling through Instagram, you're seeing people talk about what they booked or who they just signed with. And that's the thought. So I really want you to just let that breathe here and not move past it. And I want to be really careful here because I'm not going to stand here and tell you that luck is not real. It is. Being in the right place at the right time, that happens. Connections open doors. That happens too, right? But here's what I've watched up close over years of working with actors at every level of the industry. The actors who seem to keep getting lucky, they are doing something specific repeatedly, oftentimes without fully even naming it themselves, without even seeing the patterns themselves. And the actors who are watching from the outside, who are feeling like the breaks keep going to everyone else, they're usually missing one or two pieces of that same thing, right? So today is about making that thing visible. This is episode 9 of Powerhouse Conversations. If you've been following this series, welcome. The topic for today is the luck gap. What actors who get their break are actually doing differently. So let's get into it. So here's what today is not going to be. It's not going to be a conversation designed to make you feel like you've been doing it wrong. It's not a motivational speech telling you just to believe harder. And it's definitely not me telling you that luck is a myth and everything is in your control, because that would be dishonest. We know that that's just not the case in our industry at all. What time is it? What today is a framework conversation, because the gap between the actors who seem to catch breaks and the actors who don't is not random. That is the point here. It has a structure. And once you can see the structure, you can actually do something about it. So there's a reason that I really want to do this topic. And it's not because it's particularly motivating, although I think it will be. It's because powerlessness is one of the most expensive things an actor can feel. It's the thing that quietly convinces you to just stop making moves, to wait, to watch other people's careers happen, and to tell yourself a story about why theirs is different, to rationalize that. That story costs a lot of time, and time is expensive. And it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to cost that for you. So we're going to start by reframing this idea of luck, right? Because when actors talk about luck, they usually mean one of two things. Either they mean chance, as in the right casting director happened to open the right submission on the right day or the right email or whatever, or they mean access. Someone had a relationship or a connection, or an in that the actor talking about them simply didn't have, right? Both of those things are real. I want to be very clear about that. But here's what's also real. Those two things are not evenly distributed by accident. Think about what we actually know about how breaks happen in this industry. The agent who signs the unknown actor after seeing them in this tiny little showcase. That actor had put themselves in a position to be seen. Or the casting director who takes a chance on someone who doesn't have major credits. That someone had made sure their name kept appearing in the right places, attached to the right things. The break looked random from the outside, but from the inside, it was the result of a set of things, a set of conditions that have been building for months or sometimes years. Clip that. There's a concept that the researcher What's this guy's name? Richard Wiseman studied for years. He actually ran formal studies on this, looking at why some people consistently experience what they call good luck and others consistently don't. And what he found wasn't that lucky people had some gift. It was that lucky people were doing specific things that created more opportunities for chance encounters and unexpected connections to occur. They were, in a very real sense, like creating the conditions for good luck. Now, acting as lots is not some like laboratory study, right? We know that this industry is genuinely not a meritocracy, and I will never sit here and tell you that it is. But the principle holds. The luck gap isn't just the distance between you and some magical cosmic break. It's the distance between your current set of conditions and the conditions that make a break possible. And conditions can be changed. This is what the rest of today is going to be about. So I'm going to walk you now through 5 specific conditions. These are not personality traits. I want to be clear about that. They're not things that you either have or you don't have. They are things that you can do or don't do, and they can be built deliberately. You can create conditions that close the luck gap. Okay, so see which ones land for you today. So the first condition is visibility in the right places. This one sounds obvious, but when you really look at it, it's not. Visibility doesn't mean being everywhere. It doesn't mean having a large Instagram following or submitting to every breakdown that goes out. Most of the visibility that actors are focused on is actually noise. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of output, but it doesn't have a lot of direction. The visibility that creates luck is specific. It means the right people can find you. The right people know what you do. The right people actually remember you when something relevant comes up for you. So think about what that requires, right? It requires that your name is attached to work that tells a clear story. It requires that you show up in spaces where decision makers actually are, like our industry networking sessions. It requires that you know, when someone looks you up, they find something compelling and coherent, not a headshot from 7 years ago and a handful of credits that you're not even proud of. When we think about celebrities like Audra McDonald, right? She didn't just show up and get 6 Tony Awards handed to her. Before any of those wins, she had built a presence in the theater world that made her a known entity to the people who cast the productions that mattered. The visibility came first, and then these breaks look like luck from the outside, but that's not the case. So the question for you is, who specifically can find you right now? And when they find you, what do they see? If a casting director or agent who had heard your name once searched for you today, what would they find? And what would they find that made them want to look further? If your answer is not much, or I'm not sure, this is a condition worth looking into. Now, condition number 2, I'm going to call it warmth. Warmth before the ask, like warming people up before you ask them for something. This one's where a lot of actors will quietly undermine themselves and they don't even realize it's happening, because the standard practice is, I need something, so I reach out. I need an agent, so I'm going to reach out. As a director after a festival, the relationship starts with the ask, right? And in some cases that works. But here's what's far more powerful, and what the actors who seem to attract opportunities are almost always doing. They are building warmth before there's anything to ask for. What does that mean practically? It means being genuinely useful to people, showing up as a reader in casting offices, volunteering on sets or productions where industry relationships are being built, engaging meaningfully with the work of directors that you admire, writers that you admire, not as a tactic, but as a real participant in the conversation around craft. When you do that, something shifts. And by the time there's an opportunity, you're not just a name on a submission. You're a person that someone knows, someone they're familiar with, someone they've already experienced as a generous person who's grounded and real. And when a break comes, when that casting director is filling a role and your name comes up, the decision isn't being made in a vacuum where they have nothing else to go on. It's being made in the context of a relationship. That's not luck. That's relationship equity that was built long before it was needed. Bryan Cranston has talked about this. He's talked about how for years before Breaking Bad, he was just out there doing theater, doing smaller TV, always in motion, always present in the industry conversation. He wasn't famous yet, but he was known. And when Vince Gilligan was fighting to cast him in a role that everyone said was wrong for him, he could point to this track record of real relationship and real work. That wasn't luck. That was years of warmth before they ask. So I want you to think about the 5 most important relationships you have in this industry right now. How many of those relationships were built on something real before you ever needed anything from them? If the honest answer is not many, this is a condition worth building. Clip that. Now, condition number 3, we'll call this a clear signal. Here is something that almost never gets explained to actors directly. The industry is not necessarily looking for great, it's looking for clear. This is why you see people and you're like, how did they get this job? And what I mean by that is a casting director or an agent who has 30 seconds to make a decision about you is not asking, is this person talented? They're asking, do I know exactly what to do with this person? Does this person fit exactly what I have? Those are completely different questions. Most actors are trying to answer the first one when most people are asking the second. So when your materials and your credits and your presence all add up to this one coherent, specific, legible story about who you are and where you belong, all of a sudden you're placeable. And placeable actors get considered for things repeatedly. But when your signal is muddy, when your headshots say one thing and your reel says another, and your resume doesn't really connect to either one of them, you get filed. Not because you're not talented. You get filed because you're talented, right? If you weren't talented, you'd not even get filed. But no one knows exactly where to put you right now. So it's just like, they're good. I'm going to use them for something. And this is exactly why some actors will get a really strong credit and then they'll start booking in ways that they hadn't before. Nothing changed about their talent. Everything changed about the clarity of their signal. And they use that to continue to generate momentum. The industry now has a frame for them. And with that frame, that same actor who was invisible before suddenly becomes obvious. Think about Lupita Nyong'o. 12 Years a Slave was her breakout, right? Before that, she was relatively unknown. And then that performance came out and that signal was so clear, so specific, so undeniable. Yeah, I mean, yes, the Oscar, right? But also everything after that, the range of opportunities that opened up for her, the way she was suddenly in every major conversation. That one piece of work sent a signal that was so strong that it rewrote her entire professional story seemingly overnight, right? Now, most of us are not building toward a single role that's going to do all that work at once. That was kind of extraordinary, but the principle is the same at every level. clarity of signal turns visibility into opportunity. So the question for you is, if someone is in this industry who has never saw your materials, who's never met you, saw your materials, your headshots, your reel, your resume, could they describe in one sentence who you are and what you do? And would that sentence be accurate? If the answer is no, or I'm not really sure how they would describe me, this is the condition that might be costing you the most. So we've covered visibility in the right places. We've covered warmth before the ask. We've covered a clear signal. Condition number 4 is consistent presence over time. This is the one that feels the least glamorous, kind of boring, and is probably the most important. Luck in this industry has a strong correlation with time in the arena. Not years of effort, but like time in the actual rooms, like the actual spaces where the industry operates. And what that means is showing up. It means showing up more than once. Like it's not this big dramatic, like I'm here. It's years of effort, steadily over time, in a way that people who matter are impacted. They start to know your name, not because you made this big splash, but because you're simply always there. There's something that happens when someone sees your name consistently over a period of months. This like energy builds. It's not consciously or deliberately on their part, right? We hear about this all the time in marketing, like the rule of 7, which is now like the rule of 12 or whatever. People need to hear about something multiple times before they feel like, oh, I know that. Oh, I trust that. Oh, I keep hearing about this person. Huh. They were in that thing. Oh, they were at that event. Oh, they just put out that piece of work, right? That accumulation is not luck, but it produces what looks like luck because eventually someone makes a connection at a moment when it matters, and suddenly you're in a conversation that you weren't in before. Click that. Now, the actors who stop showing up, who go quiet when things aren't moving, who pull back when the momentum stalls, they lose this momentum. They lose that consistency. Every period of silence is a period when that file on you stops being updated in people's minds. And people's attention is scarce, all of us, and it's always moving. So quietly gets redirected elsewhere. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be consistently putting things out and consistently like hustling. Consistent presence doesn't require consistent output. It requires intentional, regular, visible action in the right direction. Even small things, even slow things, as long as they're real and they're consistent. So the question for you is, over the last 6 months, has your presence been growing, holding steady, or fading? Not your effort, your actual presence, what people in the industry can see. So if you feel like it's fading or you're not really sure, this is a condition worth addressing now. Not waiting till you're ready, but getting in the arena now. Now, condition number 5 is, we'll call this the ability to recognize and move on an opening. This one's kind of subtle. And it's one that we don't talk about a lot. When there's some sort of break or opportunity, it doesn't always arrive in some obvious, like clearly labeled, presented to you on a platter way. It's a small opening. It's a conversation that could lead somewhere. It's a project that seems like it might be below your level, but it has the right people attached. It's an invitation to be seen in a context that you haven't been seen in before. Actors who catch breaks are almost universally good at recognizing those things and moving on them quickly. They don't overthink. They don't wait until conditions are perfect. They see the window, they step through it. Now, actors who miss those breaks are not untalented, they're not lazy, but they might be a little hesitant. They need more information. They're waiting to feel ready. And while they're waiting, the window closes. I've seen this happen time and time again. Now, this is partly a skill and it's partly a habit of mind. It's a mindset. If I was to name the skill, I would say that it's pattern recognition. It's learning to see what a real opening looks like or feel into it. And the mindset thing is the willingness to act without having certainty, to bet on yourself before you have the proof that the bet's going to pay off. Taraji P. Henson has talked about this. She's talked about how Baby Boy changed her trajectory, that it wasn't a guaranteed break, that she had to fight for that role, that she had to make a really strong case for herself when she wasn't the obvious choice for that. And when the opening appeared, she went through it hard. She didn't wait to be invited more clearly. She moved. Again, that's not luck. It might look like luck afterwards, but it's not. It's the ability to recognize an opening and close the gap between the opening and yourself before it disappears. I know that in the past, I have had openings that I've allowed to close. And it's a painful feeling when you realize that in hindsight. So I want you to think about the last real opening that appeared in your career. Did you move on it? Did you hesitate? If you hesitated, what was the reason? Was it strategy or was it fear? If you're really honest with yourself. I would say that that's the most important question of the 5 questions that I've asked you today. So I'm going to just take a breath here and say that if you recognized a gap in any of those 5 conditions, that recognition is not a failure. It's clarity. And clarity is what makes movement possible. Philip is saying the industry isn't looking for great, they're looking for clear. That was a bar, Azure. I'm glad you appreciate it. Glad it resonates. All right, so I know there's some of you who are sitting with this and thinking, well, okay, we're talking about Bryan Cranston, Lupita Nyong'o, Taraji P. Henson. They're operating in a completely different universe than me. What does this look like at my level? And that's fair, so I'm going to answer that. So I worked with an actor, we will call him Marcus, mid-30s, SAG AFTRA member, decent resume, very strong in the room, very charismatic, but he had been submitting for years with like no real direction and no traction. When we look at him from the outside, he's doing all the right things. He's great, but nothing is quite like converting. So when we looked at his situation through the lens of these 5 conditions, what became clear was that his signal was very muddy. His headshots positioned him one way, but his reels said something slightly different. His strongest credits were in a genre that he didn't really want to pursue anymore. So anyone that looked at him was getting this message that didn't quite add up. There were things, but they weren't clear. And unclear is almost as bad as invisible or not having any things. So he made a deliberate choice. He stopped trying to be everywhere for everything, got very specific. We retooled his materials around one clear lane. He targeted relationships in that lane. We created a target list that actually made sense. He created some self-generated work that was an unmistakable expression of who he was in that lane. And I believe it was 4 months later, he signed with a manager he'd been reaching out for years, like I think 2 years, without exaggeration. Never got a response. Same exact actor, same exact work ethic, different signal, different result, right? So really closing that gap changed everything for Marcus. I'm also thinking about Priya. Priya was newer to the industry than Marcus. She was maybe a couple years out of school. She was stuck in a pattern that a lot of actors recognize. She would get close, she would get callback, she got very strong feedback, and then she wouldn't book. This happened repeatedly. So it started to feel like something was wrong with her specifically. Like the industry kept almost choosing her and then pulling back at the last second. What was actually happening here was the fifth thing that I talked about, that when these openings appeared, Priya would kind of get cautious. She would second guess her choices on self-tape. She would hold back in moments when she needed to go all in. And you can feel that energy. You can feel that hesitation. So the work that Priya did wasn't about technique. It was about learning to really recognize those openings, recognize when those breaks were there, and trust herself enough to move through them without flinching. Stop waiting to feel certain and start acting from the confidence that she already had. And to be honest, starting to work with me was part of that. It was saying, okay, I know I can do this. I'm going to take a stand and do it. She booked a co-star, and then she booked a guest star in the same quarter, same 3-month period. Same talent, different relationship to the moment of opportunity. So I share these two not as templates because we know that each of our paths are different. Marcus's path is not going to work for everyone. Neither will Priya's, of course. Neither will mine. But I share them because both of these actors were stuck in a story about luck and that it didn't happen to them. It happened for other people. And when they got out of that story and into the actual conditions, things started to move. That is available to you. So I do want to acknowledge something. You know, all 5 of these conditions are learnable. They're buildable. Intellectually, we know that, right? We're like, okay, so why isn't it easy? It's not easy. And that is because powerlessness is genuinely hard to give up. That sounds kind of strange when I say it out loud, because who would want to feel powerless? Nobody, obviously. But here's the thing. That story that luck is random and that breaks go to people who are connected and the fortunate and the ones the universe happens to favor, that story protects something. If luck is random, you can't be wrong. If it just hasn't happened yet, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just waiting for the universe to catch up to you. You're waiting for your turn. And that's a safer place to live than the alternative where the conditions are knowable, where you've just heard these, the gap is closable, and you're the one who has to close it. The alternative requires something that powerlessness doesn't. It requires you to make a bet on yourself in public where you might be wrong. It requires you to choose a lane and stay in it. It requires you to build the warm relationships and send a specific signal and show up constantly and move on the opening. And all that stuff is harder than waiting. And the actors who get through it are not the ones who found it easy. They're the ones who decided that the cost of waiting was higher than the cost of trying and being wrong. I want you to sit with that. Because if you've been feeling powerless, if you've been feeling like the brakes keep going to other people for reasons that you can't quite put a finger on, that feeling is totally understandable. It's not weakness. It's what happens when you've been in a long, uncertain situation without clear feedback. But it is a feeling worth questioning, because underneath it, most of the time, is the set of conditions that can be worked on. And that's actually really exciting, because the moment you start working on the conditions, the feeling starts to change. So I'd love to do a guided reflection with you, and give you some questions to sit with. Just let them land. Notice what comes up. Which of the 5 conditions is most clearly underdeveloped in your career right now? I want you to not really think about the one that sounds the most interesting to you, but the one that's actually the weakest. I also want you to think about, what specific move have you been waiting to make until conditions were more certain? And what is that idea of certainty actually costing you? And this last one, I want you to be gentle with yourself, but be honest. Is the story you've been telling yourself about luck protecting you from something? And if so, what? That last question might be the most important thing from today, because this is an honest look at whether the story that you've been living inside is serving you, or is just keeping you safe. Keeping you safe in the known of where you are now. So I want to come back to the question that a lot of actors are really asking when they say she just got lucky. Underneath that, what they're really asking is this: is this available to me? Or is it only available to certain people for reasons that I have nothing to do with? And here's the most important answer I can give you. The break itself, the specific one, the exact one, the moment when the right call comes at the right time, when that part does have randomness in it. I won't take that away from you. But whether you were in position for that moment when it arrives, that is almost entirely up to you. That is the luck gap, and it is closable. The actors who we talked about tonight were all positioned for the break before the break arrived. The timing was luck. The positioning was the work. You don't control the timing. You do control the positioning. So for actors who are watching this, who recognized a gap in one or more of those 5 conditions, there are ways that we can work more deeply together. We have the table, which is where you get a very clear, honest picture of your actual situation and a path forward. We have Agent Alchemy for actors who are really looking for representation right now, where that's the bottleneck. And we have Amplify, which is for actors who are ready to build real sustained visibility in the industry. And also for people who are multi-hyphenates, who do more than one thing. So the links to all of those are on this YouTube video. Okay. I want to invite you to ask questions. We've talked about a lot today. This is a very meaty Powerhouse conversation. So if you have a question, go ahead and share it. But here's what I want to leave you with, right? it's all about the conditions. There are 5 specific learnable conditions that put you in position for breaks that come. Okay. So that's the great news, that we have control here. And the actors who are building long, working, dignified careers, not necessarily like the most famous ones, but the ones who are genuinely working across decades, almost all of them have at some point stopped believing that their break was coming from somewhere outside themselves and started building the conditions that made a break possible. And that's available to you, not someday, but right now, starting with whichever of these conditions is most clearly undeveloped or underdeveloped, and start making one deliberate move in that direction. Okay. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what questions you have, and I'll see you next week.